In this lab I want to create a sun and planet gear system with a ring gear diameter 40, a planet gear diameter 10, and we'll make 4 planets, and then the sun gear diameter 20. And so I've designed a carrier to hold these gears, and I'll place this carrier into an assembly. So I've started a new assembly, and I'll do place, and I'll select the carrier, and I'll do open, and initially I'm going to ground this at the origin. So I'll right click, I'll tell you place grounded at origin, and I'll hit escape. And so here we see the carrier placed into the assembly, and I'll save that and then start creating my gears. So I'll go to the design tab to create the gears, and I'll go to the spur gear generator. And so the distance from center to center is half of this, so that's 10, half of the 20, and then half of the 5, 15. So the center to center distance is 15. My gear ratio for the outer is going to be 40 divided by 10. So I'll do a gear ratio of 40 divided by 10, and then I'll do a module of 1. My center to center distance is 15. I'm going to do a face width of, let's say, 10 for the both gears. So let's put in 10 for both of those. And if we do a calculation, it's going to tell us that there's an issue with our gears, but we can make some adjustments to the gears themselves later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK to create these gears. And I meant to make some other changes, so I'm going to, well, I'll just go ahead and place this, and then I'll go back. I meant for this to be the ring gear, and so I'm going to edit this using the design accelerator. We'll say that I did this on purpose. Alright, so actually, so it tells me that I can't change that now. So I'll change the ratio of this. So the ratio for the sun and the planet is 20 to 10. So let me change this to 20 to 10. And I'll accept that. And then I'm going to create the ring gear now. So I'll do create gears again, and this time I'm going to do internal, and that was 40 to 10. Module 1. The module is going to determine the number of teeth that we have on our gear, and actually that should be 40 to 10, so I have that right. And let me calculate here, because I was expecting a different number of teeth. Okay, so I did calculate, and so it shows me the correct number of teeth, and I've got 10 to 10 as the face distance. I'll say OK to that, and it gives me a chance to change the names of these gears as well. I may want to go in here and change the names of the gears. The problem is it doesn't really give me a good clear indication as which one is which. I'll just say OK to that and accept it, and I'll click someplace on the screen to place that one. Alright, so we have these 2 gear sets, and I'm going to then constrain or insert this one onto here, and I think the way I'll do that is I'll do the z-axis. So I'm going to expand that, and I'll find the z-axis of the larger gear. So I could do this axis to axis, and then I'd have to do face to the back face of this, or I could do an insert, and so I think I'll do that instead. So I'll do constrain, and I'll put it on insert, and I'm going to select this circle, and I'll select this circle to insert those, and we see that that is constrained. I'll say OK to that. And then if we drag this, so we see that this rotates. And so I'm going to put an insert between here and here. And I think what I'll do is put a hole into that gear to put onto this pin. And let's do a couple of things first. Let's turn off the visibility of these dimensions. We don't need to see that sketch anymore. So I'll hide that. And I'll go back to my assembly, and I'm going to do shift right click. I'll go to part priority. I'm going to open up this part, and I'll start a new sketch on the XY plane, and then I'll draw a circle here. I want to make this circle a little bit bigger than my pin to allow some clearance, so I'll make this 5.1, and I'll do extrude, and I'm going to do a cut through all. And I might want to do a different color on this gear, so I'm going to select this gear, and I'll come up here to my beach ball, and I'll select a color for this gear and save it. And so now I have this gear, and I'm going to insert this gear onto this pin. So I'll do constrain, I'll put insert, I'll select that circle, and I'll select this circle to constrain that to my carrier. I'll say OK to that. And then I'm going to let's go back and do one other option on that. So let's turn on the pitch diameter for that. So here we see a grayed out, this pitch diameter. Let's turn on the visibility of that, and that's a surface body here that we can use in dynamic simulation to set these gears in motion as well. So I want to see that, so I'll turn that visibility on. And then I'm going to open up the sun, and so we'll open that. I'll do a new sketch on the XY plane, and I'll draw a circle here for the hole in this one, and let's do this as 10.1. I'll go to 3D model and do extrude. I'll tell it to go all the way through. Okay, so we see that hole. I may want to change the color of this part, so I'll go to the beach ball, and I'll pick a color for my sun. And I'll save that, and I'll turn on the visibility of the pitch diameter for that one. Save it again. Okay, so we've got a hole in here. We can insert this over to here, so I'll do constrain insert this circle onto this circle, and I'll say OK to that. And then I'm going to put a hole in this planet, so I'll right click, and again I did shift right click to put my selection filter on part priority, so I can drill down and select, open that individual part, and I'll do a new sketch on the XY plane. I'll draw a circle for this one. I'll do that 5.1, and I'll go to 3D model. I'll do extrude, tell it to cut through all. We'll say OK to that, and I may give this one a color, so I'll go find that body, I'll select it, I'll go to the beach ball, and I'm going to select a color for this planet, and I'll turn on the visibility of the pitch diameter. We'll save it. Okay, so if I drag this one, we see that it moves. I need to do an insert constraint on that, so I'll do constrain insert, insert this hole onto that peg. And so now we've got that. Then we need to create two more planet gears, and we need to create those separately. Now we could copy the ones that we already have, or I could create new gears. I want to show you how to create a new gear, and so I'll go back to the design tab, and I'll do spur gear, and then I want this one, so we're doing the smaller gear here. I'll put this back, the ratio back on 20 to 10, and I don't want internal. I want the 10 width for the face width, but I only want to create a single gear this time. And so I'm going to turn off one of the gears, and so I'm going to create the component for gear 1. For the gear 2, I'll tell it no model. Now I'm not sure if I have this in the right, yeah, I do have it, because I want to 10, so the number of teeth 10, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to turn this one off or turn that one off. I want to turn this one off, and actually let's do calculate, because I see the wrong number of teeth. So I'll do calculate, so this, I'm not creating a second sun gear, I'm just creating another planet gear. I'll say OK to that, and I'll say OK. And so here is this planet, and then I need to do that one more time for the second planet. And so I'll do another spur gear, and everything should still be the same. So we just say OK. Now by doing it this way, if I want to go back and edit any of these gears, say change it to module 2 or module 0.5 or whatever, I can always go over here and right click and edit those using the design accelerator. Alright, so I'll open up this one, and I'll turn on the pitch diameter. And by now we should know what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to do a new sketch on the XY plane. I'll draw a circle here, 5.1. I'll go to 3D model, do extrude, tell it to cut through all. I'll select that body. I'll go apply a color to it. Oops, I unchecked my part. Alright, and then I've got one more here to do, so I'll open that. And I'll turn on the pitch diameter. And I'll turn on the visibility of the, or actually I don't need to turn the visibility on, I'll just right click and create a new sketch. 5.1. And I'll extrude cut that through all. I'll go through all. Say OK to that. I'll go to pick up a color, and let's pick up a new color. Let's get the body over here. And go up. And I picked up a color for this one. I'll save that, and I can close this one. And then I need to insert these, so I'll constrain, I'll do insert this pin or that circle onto this one. I'll apply that, and then this one onto this one. I'll say OK to that, and then I'll line these two up by eye. And when we create the gears in the design accelerator, there is a little bit of interference between the gears. So if we want to create true involute tooth profiles, that is another lab tutorial to show how to create these as true gears that don't intersect. So these are cosmetic gears, not true involute profiles. I'll rotate this one around to where this one is lined up. Then I'm going to put some constraints between this one and the sun gear, and so I'll go to the assemble tab, and I'll do constraint. I'll do a motion constraint, and I want rotational and counter rotating, and then I'll select the surface body, the pitch diameter surface body on this gear and the sun gear, and it automatically figures out the ratio between those two. I'll do apply, and I'll do the same thing over here on this one. I'll select that pitch diameter, I'll select this pitch diameter, and I'll say OK to that. Did a few things right. I'll save it. Now if we try to rotate this right now, it's not going to rotate for two reasons. One, I have the carrier grounded, and then also we need to make these subassemblies as flexible. And so first let's unground this carrier. So I'm going to unground that. Now you could hold the ring or the carrier or the sun gear to have the whatever gear ratio that you want. If I drag this, we see that everything moves. I want to constrain the XY plane of the carrier to flush to the XY plane of the assembly. And then I want to constrain let's put it back on mate. I want to constrain the Z-axis of the assembly to the Z-axis of the carrier. Now if we test this, we'll see that some of this rotates. Now it looks like these two gears are going backwards when I rotate, and so I'm going to try flipping those constraints that I put on there. So let's go to the relationships, and for this rotational constraint I'm going to edit that, and I'll put it on this solution, and we'll do the same thing on this one. So I'll edit this one, put it on this solution, and then we'll try dragging this again. And I have some trouble getting this to work in the assembly environment, but if we go into dynamic simulation, it will work in dynamic simulation. But we also need to make this flexible, so I'll right click and set that one to be flexible, and I need this one to be flexible. And then these two parts are just two parts by themselves, so that's not going to matter. And if I drag the ring gear, it doesn't seem to work properly. I drag the sun gear, it doesn't seem to work properly. If I grab the one of the planets, it tries to work properly, but I haven't gotten this to work in the assembly environment correctly. So I'll go into dynamic simulation, and so go to environments, dynamic simulation, and it says our mechanism is over constrained, so we're going to have to do some repairs on that. And it turned off both of my rolling cylinder joints. And if I go to the simulation settings, we see that it was set to automatically convert some constraints. I'm going to turn this off, but I'm going to tell it to keep the joints that it did put in here. And so as I go down through these joints, I wasn't expecting a revolution or a cylindrical joint. I was expecting only revolution joints on these parts. So I'm going to delete this cylindrical joint, and I will delete this cylindrical joint, and then I'm going to turn the rolling cylinders, unsuppress those, and it might give us an error on that. I'm not sure why it didn't accept those, so I'll just delete those and put those in again. Alright, so I have a revolution joint for each gear, and then I'm going to do a rolling cylinder in cylinder. So I'll do a rolling cylinder in cylinder, and notice it says pick the outer component first, and I didn't turn on the pitch diameter for that so that I can see it, so I'm going to have to exit out of this, and we'll open up this ring gear. I'll turn on that pitch diameter so that we can see that. So that's the reason that we turn the visibility on for these. And then I'll do that rolling cylinder in cylinder again. I don't need to put a tangency on there because they're already tangent, so I'll put it here for one constraint rolling. It says select the outer component first. I'll select this circle on the edge of this, or you could pick the cylinder itself. That cylinder, and then for the second cylinder I'll select this cylinder, and I will say apply to that. And then I'm going to do a rolling cylinder on cylinder for these two. So I'll do rolling cylinder on cylinder. And I again, I don't need the tangents because it's already tangent, so I'll put it on one constraint. And I prefer to select the smaller pinion gear first, but it doesn't really matter. I'll select those two and I'll apply that, and then I'll select this one, and I got the wrong place, so I'll go back to select the cylinder and the second cylinder. I'll apply that, and then I'll get this one and second cylinder. I'll get this one, apply that, and then I'll get this one and second cylinder. I'll get this cylinder. I'll say OK. Now hopefully when I drag this, it now moves correctly. So I'll drag it, and we see that the gears operate the way that we would expect them to operate. So that is a sun and planet gear system. Now if you want to turn this, have it turn by itself, you could put an imposed motion on one of these revolution joints, maybe perhaps for the sun. If you go to the properties of that, and 1 degree of freedom rotational, I'll go to enable an imposed motion. We'll do a constant velocity, let's say of say 7,200 degrees per second, and we'll play this. That might be too fast, but we need to do some adjustment on that, or maybe turn the carrier. You can make a decision on that. I'm going to undo that. So do some experimenting to see which one of these to drive. And again, probably you want to hold one of these, either the carrier or the ring gear or the sun gear. Have it held, and the one that you have held is going to determine your gear ratio and whether it's a forward gear or a reverse gear. And if you want to turn off the visibility surface bodies, under the view tab, object visibility, you can turn off all work features here. Actually, let's do that again. Let's do why it didn't turn it off, it in the parts, construction surfaces. Turn off construction surfaces, and that will hide those pitch diameter surface bodies. And once you get the imposed motion set up on whichever gear that you want, we'll play this, and so we see that those gears then rotate as we would expect.